Trivia's Inspirational Radio would like to inform you that the views, thoughts, and opinions expressed in the following show are solely the sentiments of the participants of the show. Trivia's Inspirational Radio Network is not responsible for content. As always, thanks for watching and enjoy the show.
All right, happy Tuesday, happy Tuesday, happy Tuesday. I'm your girl, Chanelle, Coleman, Wesley, and welcome to another episode of Unapologetically Unplugged. Today, I have the pleasure of having this amazing woman who is sitting next to me, this phenomenal woman of God. Her name is Dr. T.R.I.V.A. Dr. T.R.I.V.A. is both a multi-award-winning author. She is best-selling author. She's a minister, ordained minister. She's a media personality, a Christian speaker, and just doing so many things. I want you guys to put a big hand together for my girl, Dr. T.R.I.V.A. Dr. V, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Chanelle. It's such a pleasure to be with you today because I know it's going to be a great one. So I got my seatbelt on and I'm ready.
I'm excited. I have been planning and excited. When you first confirmed and said yes, I'm like, okay, yes, I know this is going to be an amazing show. I know you're going to provide so many great insights for everybody. But before we jump into that, I did want to take a moment just to think about and have a moment to reflect back on how Dr. T.R.I.V.A. became to be. Before, we've had a lot of different conversations. And you spoke once about an aunt that you had who was really kind of an inspiration for you. She held a job to make a very distinguished position, something that was outside of the norm, especially being in that era. How has her journey as a professional really kind of pushed and motivated you to be the constant professional that you are today?
I was 10 years old in their wedding, my uncle and her. And at the time, I spent a lot of time at their house. So I got a chance to be exposed to her and her style and just looking at coming from a place that was considered very poor, being raised by a single mother of 8 children. There was only certain things you got a chance to see back then. And, you know, forget about a bus and a car. We didn't do any of that. If you didn't walk, you weren't going. And so spending time at her house was like my moment of escape. I was the center of attention at her house. My uncle and she had no children. And so I was there a lot and loved it because that was my time to really get a glimpse of something other than what I saw in my neighborhood. Everybody in the neighborhood were in the same spot. We all were poor, but we were loving, we were friendly, we shared what we had with each other. But to see another side, to see a professional woman at that time, at the age of 10, you're talking about 1964, somewhere around there, to see her in a professional field, that was rare back then because most of the women in my neighborhood were going up to the rich neighborhoods, helping to clean houses and iron and that kind of stuff. So to see her as a manager at a bank, that impressed me in that moment. That told me I can dream bigger than what I saw. And so until you see it, you won't know to dream it. And so that's the importance of exposing children early. And so that's the exposure I got. And that set me on the path that I'm on.
I love it. I love it. Taking that experience as inspiration and going into the field as being chief deputy administrator for the state of California for an extensive period. I know that would have to be a situation where you were constantly breaking glass ceilings and going ahead and changing the narrative. How did you pass some of those same jewels and sense of pride to the women who were coming behind you as you were trailblazing your own path?
Well, let me tell you, I not only had my aunt, but I had my own mother. When I listen to women today with only a few children complaining about how hard it gets, I think to myself, ask my mother. She did it with 8, but she ran our household in such an organized way. All of us as children had an assignment in the house. So our house was never in disarray. It was always organized. Even my youngest sister, her job, my mother smoked back then. Her job was to clean the ashtrays every day. So our house was immaculate because there was enough workers in there to make sure it stayed that way. So even though when my mother finally began working, she was working 2 jobs, leaving early, coming back late. My older sister was the one that maintained the household. She was the one that cooked. All of that happened because my mother taught us to be that way. And so I don't see making an excuse. So back then, when my mother married and then divorced, my oldest siblings were the first husband, and then my father was her second husband, and she had 5 with him. And so as a result, when they divorced, my mother had to go on subsistence and receive aid. Back then, back in the 50s, they came in and checked your house to make sure you were not using their money for anything other than what they prescribed. They came in and looked through your cabinets, your closets, making sure you weren't buying things that you shouldn't. You couldn't own a car back then. So my mother's car had to be placed in her brother's name just so that she had a means to get around and take us around. So when you think of that, and my mother saying to herself, I'm sick of this. I don't want to be on this stuff. Let me find something I can do to make some money. So she had befriended the family that owned the local grocery store and approached the owner and said, look, I'll be willing to work for free if you just train me on grocery checking. And the owner told my mother, no, Miss Elvina, I won't train you. I will hire you, then I'll train you. My mother left that job when that store closed and began working for a major chain, at a grocery chain, and she retired from there 25 years later. And I speak a lot of times to other groups who are receiving subsistence and trying to get off all of that. I tell them my mother's story. And so I saw 2 examples of strong women who decided to change the narrative and say, I can do more than what I have right now. And that's exactly what my mom did. And then bought her first home in the 60s, which was also unheard of for a Black woman to own her own home. I think I was in high school by then, but it didn't matter. She got it because that was her goal, and that's what she did. And she continued to be that way throughout her life. And so I had 2 great examples.
I love it. Just the fact that you're talking about your mom and your aunts, 2 strong women of character who are setting, high milestones for you guys to be able to look and to be able to run in that same way. And you can see some of those same things that are entrenched within your own story and things that you're passing down to your children, to your grandchildren, and not just the community at large. When I think about your story, especially when you're talking about your daughters and this before the development, of your Adam is asleep until God, opens his eyes. This whole story, this conversation about what it takes and what it requires to find a good mate. You can see some of those same ideals and values being, laid within the groundwork of that. How does it feel to know that you're not just, creating a legacy for your children and your children's children, but the community of women as a whole?
Somebody had to mention that to me. It's kind of like what we talked before. I don't really get excited about titles and things of that nature. I really don't. Yes, I'll accomplish and try to set a goal and achieve certain things, but it's not going to change my day and it's not going to change who I am. I might feel that way even without the title. So I don't get excited about those kind of things. I really don't. Some people have offered certain specific awards to me, and I said, no, I think I'll pass because it's not something that drives me. What drives me is the fact that I can speak the truth, be vulnerable and open and share my truth and my story so that I can help somebody else. And when I see that I've helped them, to me, that's an award to me. That's something an accolade I can put on a notch on in my collar because I helped something I said help somebody. And I hear that over and over, even from the people that's read my book. I want to go back to something you said earlier and how it drives me. It wasn't an easy transition for me to go from a poor neighborhood. I had to teach myself how to talk properly because I can go back to my street language anytime I choose to when I'm having fun with with those who know me. I can go back to that when I need to, but I had to teach myself how to speak better so that I'm not judged the minute I walk into a room. And so I remember getting my first job as a supervisor. The first time I took the exam, I had a Black supervisor who said, you better take this exam, Velma. You know this stuff. They're going to talk about this new program. You're the trainer of that new program. You know it. So you should. I got in there and I froze and came out of there because everybody's saying, you got this, Velma. This is your program, blah, blah, blah. I went back to the office. I told my supervisor, I'm not taking that exam ever again. I said, I'm not going to do it. And the people on the panel knew me. That was more embarrassing to me than not getting the score. I'm sure they were hoping I would get a great score. And my supervisor said, if that exam comes around next year, oh, yes, you are. You're taking it.
I love it.
So I did go back and take it. And that's when I became a supervisor, from a supervisor to a manager. And then I traveled from the Bay Area to Sacramento as a deputy administrator. So I managed the same office that I got my first job in. I
Wow.
managed that team. And so I made sure that I always gave back to the communities where I came from. When I sat around the table of decision makers and I didn't see enough services going to where I came from, I made
Mhm.
sure that happened. So I'm very grateful. And yes, the rumor was swirling around that I was a token. And I said, well, I guess I better be the best token you've ever seen. So, and that's what I did.
You know what I think is sad, like the irony of it is when you are the first, you know what I mean, to be able to cross that threshold,
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
sometimes there is that stigma that's attached to it. No,
Yeah.
it doesn't mean that I'm a token. It means I was the person who was, the great candidate for the position. I fit the bill, you know what I
Yeah.
mean? And
Yeah.
just being the constant professional that you are, I'm sure color had nothing to do at all with the decision, but
It
more
did
to
not.
honor the fact that you were capable, you were
Yeah.
professional, you were trained, and you were equipped to do the job. Otherwise, you would not have remained in that space for
Absolutely.
the length of
Solely
time that you did.
solely based on the score that a panel gives you in response to the questions that they offer you. It's solely based on the score. And I remember they gave us, after we did our, after, not, no, just before the interview, they gave us a psychological test. And it was a test that said, if this is this, which one is the least choice you would make? Which is the
Mhm.
one you would make immediately? All of that. And none of them fit anything I would do. So I kept saying, none of the above, none of the above. So they took the test back in there. And the person brought it back up. They said, the panel wants you to please just answer the question. I said, I wouldn't do any of these things. And they said, well, why don't you try doing, this would be the least I would ever do. This would, so took it back in there. The report I heard from the director that hired me, she said, you amazed them with that test. They
They
couldn't
probably thought
believe it.
about it afterwards, like, you know what, she's right. So what is the least? What's
Right,
the least likely thing that you would do?
right.
I love it. I love it. Just speaking of your resiliency and your strength, that's something that just speaks echoes on your experience. How is that? How important is faith in helping you to be able to navigate through situations that have difficulty, whether it's a missed opportunity, maybe it's a loss that maybe you've suffered, could have been personally, professionally. How has
Mhm.
your faith been able to help you to transition and navigate through those times?
It's everything, Chanelle. It's everything in how you treat people, even the ones that were not friendly with you initially, even the
Mhm.
ones that you knew spread the rumor about you before you got there. I just wanted to demonstrate because, by the way, sometime later when I began making the changes in my area, those same people came to me and said, you're doing some great things. I want to know what you're doing. Of course, I'll help you. Of course, I'll share it.
Wow.
And so I'm
Wow.
saying that I don't get caught up in that kind of stuff. Your faith
Mhm.
teaches you how to treat people because the bottom line is this. I have a spout that flows from heaven down. And as
Mhm.
long as I keep that open, my blessings are always going to flow, no matter what the difficulties is. And usually those things people come across your path and things like that. They only come across your path to see if they can disrupt what you're doing. And so I don't
Mhm.
let that happen because you're not going to have me clog my spout. So
I know
I'd
that's
rather
right.
love you and move on. Because as long as my spout, it doesn't matter. It's not
Yeah.
about the other person. It really is about me and how I want to continue to move forward because I have God that's behind me, goodness and mercy following me. I have him on my
Yeah.
side. I have him looking forward. And so it's important. I need his wisdom. And so, therefore, my favorite scripture is Proverbs 3:6. In all thy ways, acknowledge him and he'll direct thy path. That word acknowledge in the original language means invite in. God is
Mm.
not going to be a bully to bully himself into situations that you don't invite him into. So I try to make a practice to invite him in. So when I run into those kind of situations, okay, God, you're going to have to tell me what to do, but I'm going to keep moving forward. And I'm not going to get stuck here, but show me what you would have me to do. Decisions that I make, I have a list, God has a list. I always check in. What's on your list, God? Because that book I released in April this year, I
Mhm.
wrote it in 2 weeks. Because God said, release a
What?
book. Release the book of Fools on April Fools. I said, God, it's only 2 weeks.
What? 2
Yes,
weeks?
2 weeks.
Oh, wow. Now that's something that, and I didn't know that. I didn't know that 2 weeks.
Yes, ma'am.
That's God. That's
Yes, it
God. two
is.
weeks
If he
because
says
you're a
do,
constant professional. So two
yeah,
weeks.
yeah. So
Wow.
everything, faith is important to me in everything.
I love that you constantly say that you're tight as two women, and it's not just something that you say. Some people are just big on things that they say. It's a good sound bite. It sounds good, you know. I can go ahead and say that thing again, but this is actually virtues and your characteristics, who you are
Mhm.
as a woman.
Mhm.
You know what you aspire to be, and you can just tell the radiance of the light of God upon your life and by every project that you touch, the compassion that you have, how you show up in spaces. It really truly speaks volumes. When you think about your line of work as a minister and how you kind of weave that into your dating and relationship experience, because truly what God has joined together, no man will put asunder. And
Mm-mm.
sometimes we forget that he's the central part of a relationship, that is the glue that keeps relationships together. 50 years of marriage. First of all, let me just say congratulations. This is something
Thank you.
that you just don't see
No.
anymore. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it's truly such a accomplishment. First
Mm.
of all, give us some of the secrets, Dr. V. We want to know, what does it take to be able to be an effective helpmeet, with your partner during that time? Because I watched one of your videos, which I wish I could have been there during the live presentation.
Really?
Yeah, for the CBLR, Christian Book Lovers Institute,
Yes.
and you were talking about conditions versus quality attributes, and you said when you started off the journey, he had an afro, and then Elvis left the building, and I thought that was just too cute. But it
Yes.
just shows the different spaces and time that you guys have been together, all the monumental moments that you all have been able to make together as a unit.
Right. Right.
What were some key points that you feel like people who are just trying to navigate through marriage need to know?
First of all, preparation takes time, and it happens way before you meet him. So it's important for you to get yourself in a place where you're ready for him. Marriage requires that God is in that it's centered at the point you meet that person, and he remains at the center. That's why the threefold cord cannot be broken. He must be a part of that process. You might feel this is the person, but you definitely want to affirm that he is through God. And the other thing too is I can't treat my husband any different than the way that God tells me to. So
Mm,
anytime I'm being disrespectful or I'm not honoring what I committed to God to do for him in this marriage, then I'm not just offending him, I'm offending God. And so when
mm,
you keep in mind that how you treat each other is based on God's definition and what God has instructed us to do, it's not just, well, he always and she always know. What did God say? And so
right.
we apply a lot of grace in this marriage. And I tell a lot of people, I said, the one place you're going to live out scripture is in your house, in
Talk
your
about
marriage. You're going to live those words. We can escape it and run and hide it in the closet while we're single.
it.
But when you're in it, God is expecting so much more. And there's so many definitions of marriages today. There's some people that are married. It's not a real marriage. It's just y'all just roommates. So call it whatever you want. And then there's others that it's not the definition of marriage that God has ordained. And so God created this. He created a union between a male and a female. And a helpmeet, by the way, is not someone who's subservient to him. And I hear a lot of people say, well, God took a rib from his side. That's a lie. The rib didn't come from his side because the ribs on the side are used to protect the organs. So why would God remove something that's intended to protect the organs? But if you do your research, you'll find that so many millions of people have an extra rib. And I say, okay, God, you always leaving these funny clues to let us know where you actually took that rib from. The rib was up here. So many people have an extra rib up here. And so when you look at the position of authority up here, the helpmeet is not just subservient. She's the co-lead in that
Wow.
household. There's one lead, but there's a co-lead. So as a deputy administrator, I was the one in charge of leading all those offices and all those teams, over 100 people. But I had to have people and support to help me run it. And so therefore I had co-leaders. They weren't the leader, but they had just as much authority and maybe that I placed upon their shoulders to do what they have been, asked to do. So there it is in terms of a woman's role. And so therefore, when you think in terms of God saying two individuals have to come together and operate as one. I got my opinion. I was raised and I have my experience, and he was raised and had his experience. And we have to bring all of that together so that we can now operate as one. So two becomes one. That's not an easy process. That means we have to push together what you think, what he thinks, and push all of that together and come to some kind of consensus in terms of how we're going to operate as a couple. And so that's what's in that process takes time, but you have to be committed to the process. And it can happen because two can support each other. Two can also separate because you can have a difference of opinion. There can be division in two. And so I can see why God says operate as one. There's no math, no number competes with one. No. One doesn't compete with any other number. As we have one God, one. And so therefore, when you operate as one, then you are able to operate where you can now deal with the attacks that will come upon that marriage. Yes. Because if you don't know how to deal with those difficult times, if you don't understand that the enemy of your soul is going after unity because he hates it. He hates unity and he hates agreement, whether friendships, businesses, whatever. So definitely in a marriage. So you got to know who your true enemy is. My husband is not my enemy, and I'm not his. So we have to take our time and pick apart. Okay, now what just happened? We were having a good day. What just happened? Let's look at this and see where it came from. And then we can identify the little toehold that the enemy tried to place in our day and deal with him, not with each other.
I love that. Deal with him and not with each other. I think so many times that's what happens. The enemy takes that little foothold and makes it into a large gaping hole. And before long, the two of you are going back and forth and don't even understand what happened or how you got here to have this divide. And that's why it's so important to keep Christ at the center of everything that we do. He has to be the foundation. I love just what my idea is and what Dr. Velma's Bagby's family is like. You talk about in the Catch series how a lot of your family and friends are actually members or people, characters in the different books. And how your husband, it was really models Grayson, the main character. And he just sounds like such an inviting character and knowledgeable as well. How did he feel about, the way that you depicted him in this fictitious book?
He loves it. He really loves it. He enjoyed it. He was part of the process when I was writing and developing the character of Grayson. When Grayson was having the personal interaction with his daughter during that fishing trip where he had that intimate conversation concerning the problems, I said, what would you say to your daughter? What would you do right here? And so I wanted to get his perspective, a male perspective for that response. So that's what I had to do. Just like the fishing, I didn't know anything about fishing. I had to ask my brother, who will get up fishing, go to sleep fishing. Oh, wow. And so he helped me to navigate and create these characters. And it was funny that as he described the fish, I could see the exact guy that needed to be that fish. So I needed this help to really get the perspective of a person who's an expert at fishing, as well as my husband's expertise as a father, because we have two daughters. What would you do here? And I'm sure there were many challenges along the way in raising them, but I needed his perspective and that character so that I know exactly what a man would say in that moment.
It really resonates in the book. I mean, it just seems like he's an actual person, and probably because he's an actual person after your husband, right? And you can just really feel that through the pages. I really wanted to go back to find out what was that conversation with your daughters like that kind of prompted, the need for you to say, not only were you going to provide this instruction for your daughters, but actually take it to something where the entire community and the world at large can engage in, because so many times we have a false or preconceptions of what we feel like dating is or marriage is, and you really kind of dispelled a lot of myths. One of them that I do want to talk about is there pee in the dating pool. So Dr. Velma, You are a relationship coach. You are a multi-award-winning best-selling author. You're an ordained minister, a media personality, and you just have a wealth of knowledge and experience, over 50 years of marriage. Dr. V, is there pee in the dating pool?
There's a mess in the dating pool. There's a mess in the dating pool. When I did my research, talking to my daughters, I made an intentional decision that if we were going to have these conversations and we were going to put it in a book, because that was something they suggested later on, because the friends were asking, tell us some more of what your mom is saying. That told me there wasn't enough conversation and people were seeking that. And so I wanted to make sure I was well versed. So what I did was I went back and did a deep dive. These were both registered nurses. I could not just throw some scriptures at them in terms of what I needed to really make sure I came from a place of truth. And so that's when I went back myself, because we were always throwing around scriptures in the church about you need to do this and you can't be single but I didn't want that fluff stuff. So I had to be deeper and had to go deeper. And that's what I did. And that's when I discovered what I shared with you about the rib. I said, man, I've been hearing this all my life in church. It's rib from the side and she needs to be by her side. No, she doesn't. So I had to go back and really do a deep dive, and so that I can give them the truth. And that's when I discovered that Adam didn't have any part in who God chose for him. Neither did Eve. And I hear these people when I'm talking about it saying, I'm not ready. You know, one person, our publicist, I told him, I said, you can say all you want to. I said, it's not your decision. God will decide when it's time for you to cross our path. So I'm saying to you that God did not have Adam make a choice. Matter of fact, Adam was enjoying his fellowship with God in the garden before Eve was even created. He was not looking for anybody. He was happy and satisfied with what he was and where he was. It was God that made the determination that it's not good for man to live alone. Now, there was Adam exercising his authority, naming the animals. He was happy, which is where he should be when he discovers you. He should be in a place where he's satisfied with where he is in God. And so when it was God said, wait a minute, it's not good. He's naming the animals 2 by 2, and it's not good that he would be alone. So he put him to sleep and didn't make him a part of the process. Took the rib that we now know, God gave us a clue, around the neck, and in that DNA created the woman that would match his DNA.
Yes.
And so that's why it's not hard for us to discover who that person is, because it should be such a match. That you know your DNA, you have his DNA and he has yours. And so he created Eve and fashioned her differently from Adam. And so it was on purpose. We're physically capable of receiving love. Why did God do that? Made us physically able to receive love. And so therefore God purposely did it the way he did it. And when it was time, he opened Adam's eyes to her. And that's when he declared. Every man would do that. And I tell women a lot of times, when you're trying to do a Build-A-Bear situation, like this, not going to the mall and you make him be the kind of husband you want him to be before you marry him. No, you take away what he's supposed to discover on his own as a man. So if he's still at dust level, why are you even trying to talk to this dude? He's not even finished.
Dr. V, you put some serious thing on it. I'll tell you, it's a lot of sisters out here who can totally relate to this conversation.
I've seen it, Chanelle. I've seen it.
Trying to be down there in the dust like God, trying to make something out of this dust. And it don't happen like that.
You weren't even in the dust. We weren't even in the dust. So why are you getting in there?
We have no place in there, but we're trying to mess around with places we shouldn't be in.
And go in there and try to build a bear ourselves. Get in God's way. Because maybe what he's going through is what he's supposed to go through, so God can build him to be the man he needs to be. And so we insert ourselves and get in the way, which is why I told my daughters, why do you think Eve wasn't there? I said, because she would have inserted herself and had an opinion about how he was doing the animals and how they lined up. And
you know what? That's so many insights that I had never even thought about, Dr. V. But that's so true. You know, God is orchestrating,
Yep.
and God is bringing the two together. You know, she's non-existent at this point. He's
Mm-hmm.
happily, blissfully asleep at this point, and
Mm-hmm.
then God brings the two together, and
Yep.
that's how it should be.
Yep.
That's how, you know, you
Always.
maintain a marriage. And I mean, those are just beautiful points. You know, points that you hear, that you know, but the way you just strung that whole thing together, Dr. V, I love it. I do. Um, let's get on some of these fishes, because when I first heard the the analogy for the fishes, you know, between the catfish and the sturgeon and the puffer fish, I'm like, she is, you know, this is really serious here. I mean, because there are literally characteristics of people I know. I won't name
Yes.
the names, but I
You don't
just
have
people
to.
that I know.
I've met them.
I said, how did she get? And I mean, down. So, what was the inspiration for you to, first of all, use fish, you know, as an analogy for dating types? And then what gave you the correlation to be able to figure out, okay, this fits with this fish here, and what fits with this one here, and how I can really teach this in a way that people can easily digest it and understand it? Because sometimes when you can
Yeah.
give a topic, it can go over people's head,
Uh-huh.
but not in this situation.
Right. Because remember, I wanted to use the same storytelling style that Jesus used with the parables.
Yes.
Jesus never hit anybody over the head with a scripture. He never did. Neither did he say, you know, you need to now. No, he never did that. He said, well, look, let me tell you a story. And then he used something that was familiar with them. And then in the story, he weaved it in a way so that the person can discover themselves in that same problem, that same predicament. And then he provided either the tools to change or the way of escape, whatever was needed. He included that in the story. And at the end, he didn't say, now make a decision. He didn't do that. He went on about his business. It was up to the person. So I said, okay, that's what I need to do. I need to weave these stories in a way that if this is a person and this is how these are the situations they're facing, then they can discover themselves in the story. In the stories, and every last one of them, there were situations where you would know how to get out. You would know how to recognize the red flags instead of excusing them or ignoring them, paying attention to the things that you need to pay attention to. Understanding that it's not about what a person looks like. Because let me tell you, when the prophet was told to go to Jesse's house to anoint the next king, Jesse paraded all those GQ sons of his that would have been on the front of a GQ magazine, paraded them. And God said, no, none of those. They looked kingly. They had the size, and these were the same cowards that stood on the line, afraid to fly it.
Right.
So God said, no, ask him if he has another son. He goes out and he gets David. Now, here's what women do. Women would immediately look at the GQ guys if they were at the party. But here comes ruddy David, smelling like sheep.
Right.
Just out there simply doing his job. And no one would have turned and said, maybe he's a good catch. No one. And so that's why it's important for us not to focus so much on the condition, what's on the outside, but really explore and that's what God said, that's the king, because I like his heart. And that's what we have to go back to, is stop looking at what's on the outside, because them GQ guys made horrible examples. But David was the best example out of all of them. And so that's what we want to look for. So when I looked at the fish, I said that I spoke with my brother, who was the expert. I simply said, once I realized that Jesus, how he modeled and weaved the stories and the parables, I knew I wanted to use fish. So I talked to my brother, and the minute I said, just tell me what fish you like to catch. How do you catch them? What he began to tell me the personality of the fish, where they go. Catfish, he said, those are hard to catch. Did you hear that? Catfish are hard to catch. So why are we even trying to catch one? He's supposed to come find us. When a man findeth a wife, no, you're not supposed to go looking for him in the bottom of the lake, down deep in the mud, sitting there waiting for dead things to fall, because they love smelly bait, which is usually dead things, old things that will fall down. He's not a worker. He's not going after. what he needs to eat. He's waiting for it to fall. And so therefore, even you, he's going to wait for you to cross his path. He's not going after you. And so therefore, the fish, as he described them, I knew exactly. I said, Skip, and my brother's name is Skip. I said, I didn't know catfish are called garbage fish. He said, that's all they eat. I still have been eating catfish all my life. And they eat garbage. So then he gets to the sturgeon. Mm-hmm. And I remember growing up in the church where I watched one of the leaders who fit the sturgeon perfectly. I didn't realize it while I was growing up, but now as a seasoned woman, I look back and I know exactly what was happening. Mm-hmm. I was like, oh, he dating her now? Oh, wait a minute. Wasn't he dating her last week? Just a young woman. I didn't know.
Right.
He's dating. Sturgeon is the one that my brother said men or women hated fishing for sturgeons because they're difficult to catch, because they're sneaky. You see, you can sit up there all day with your bait on the hook, thinking the bait is still there, but the sturgeon has already slowly nibbled the bait away.
Wow.
And so the sturgeon is the one that was a church leader who would travel, and he nibbled everywhere he went. That was, I'm telling you, as he began to tell me these stories, the only fish that he didn't tell me about that I had to do research on, I wanted a toxic relationship in the book. I've seen those experiences. I even ministered to a young woman that was getting beaten by the man she was with. And girl, as I was talking to the woman, I can look in her eyes and tell she was going right back. And it just bothered me. So I said, but if I can help somebody, let me create a story in there that speaks to this kind of scenario. And sure enough, I created that story based on my research on the puffer fish. That is one fish that has human-like eyes that you can gravitate towards it, thinking it looks so warm and friendly. But you agitate it, and it puffs up 3 times its size with poisonous points coming out of his body. Now, you don't know that yet. He's going to present the best side of himself, which is what the man did in the story. Presented the best. He had money. He was a professional. And you hear a lot about these egotistical professionals. There are a lot of people who are very successful, have a lot of money, but they're crazy.
True.
So don't get mesmerized or become mesmerized over what you see on the outside. That's why it's important to really explore who that person is in their heart. Because had that woman in the story really examined him better before she went on and married him, had she determined why he divorced his first wife, because he beat her, when she started seeing this behavior after she married him, she then remembered doing a background check on him and had the contact to his ex-wife, called him, and that's when she discovered he was beating her. Until she had her child, he almost began to beat the child. He hid the child in the oven, cold oven, to keep him from beating the baby, and made sure he did her rather than her child. And as soon as the husband left for work, that's when she and the baby escaped. And I remember giving this story to a young woman at my doctor's office. She said she had a friend that was in a difficult relationship and none of them can convince her to leave. I said, give her the book, ask her to read chapter 6. Do you know the woman read chapter 6 and got out of that relationship? So I can't get an award for that, but that rewards me, because that's when he knows that somebody was able to get out of something that particular chapter was placed in there on purpose for that reason.
So it's not just reading material, it's ministry.
Absolutely.
I mean, because the way that you're going into dissecting and allowing God just to be able to move in the situation, because sometimes, people can tell you all the right things, but when you're stuck on something, you're stuck on it, and the more people try to tell you something, the more you put up the fight against it. And just being able to be alone with the book and the Holy Spirit to be able to minister and to give those nudges. Now that's something that you just can't even get, and you really can't put a price tag on, because some things only God can get you out of them, because you need that aha moment to turn on the light for you to wake up. Because so many times we can be asleep in our situations. Dr. V, I have to know, we're going to transition just a little bit.
Okay.
because then you did a book about she'll tear down the house. I said, oh, wait a minute now. She about to step on all the women's toes, but we needed it. We needed it because at the same token, in the dating field, men also need to be aware of what was going on. And during my research, I did see that your husband was also a contributor saying, hey, what about these women? And your nephew was saying, okay, so we're
Right.
going to
Well,
address these women. So what gave you, because first of all, I appreciate the fact that you're talking on both sides of the aisle, because there are some things that we both need to address. Back in the day, there was the book, Men Are From Mars and Women Are From Venus.
girl.
And it seems like you've gotten the languages together between, what's happening on Mars and what's happening on Venus,
Well,
so that we can get some understanding. So what was the inspiration for you behind doing She'll Tear Down the House?
that was another one of my awards that the men reached out to me. I didn't know I had a small pocket of men that were actually reading the stories. I set out to help the women. And so when I found that out, they asked me, when are you, Dr. Velma, going to write something about the wrong women to date? Now, the men have always been notorious about looking at conditions, what she looks like, how she's built, all of that. So physical traits. And again, it's about helping them to learn how to look beyond that, so they don't end up with some of the women we see in the book. And the second thing is, a lot of people talk about narcissistic men, but they don't talk about narcissistic women, because they're out there too.
Yes,
And then the syndrome that a lot of professional women have, that's a real syndrome that I talk about in the book, where she thinks because she can turn something around in business, that she has that ability to see what needs to be changed and fixed, and has achieved that. She thinks she can do the same thing with a man. That's a syndrome for professional. So you hear people say he was intimidated by my success. No, he wasn't. You just didn't know how to take it all off. Because like I said, as a professional woman, I ran, multiple offices and 100 staff. But when I came home, I was just Pastor Bruce's wife.
I know that's
The deputy administrator. I didn't wear that home. And so a lot of women forget to take that side of their professional world and set it aside and just be a woman with that man. And so that's why there's always that confusion. And so I did a survey with the men before I wrote the book. I said, can you tell me what are some of the challenges you're facing in the church? This wasn't outside the church, in the church. And so that's how those characters were created. I began to take the survey, and then you'll see in the book a survey that was done by Pastor Grayson. That's the actual survey that I did.
Wow.
Right. These are the things they said. And so I said now, and I integrated in Pastor Grayson's response to all of this. Now it's time for us to start adding a little bit of those hard questions we normally didn't ask until a person was ready to get married or during pre-marriage counseling. I said, no, that's going to be too late. They need to have some of these questions
Right.
way before then. Because I remember sitting in premarital counseling sessions with my husband. I'm sitting there and we're like, they're trying to get us to fix a problem that will never go away because they're trying to marry the wrong person. So we can't fix that. And so that was important to me. So as I heard from the men, I knew how to now create these stories. And I purposely had a certain group of narcissistic women. I purposely did that. One was a mother who was very narcissistic and controlling of her son. That was important for me to specify. And so there were other little unique things that I did. The man who died at 35 because he was busy working a couple of jobs because he made the commitment to the woman he married that she would never have to do anything. He raised the kids. He had the house clean. He had a housekeeper. He had a babysitter. He had everybody coming in to help because she did nothing, but she did go out and enjoy all the new clothes he bought for her and all of this. So she did her own thing. But those were not what I would call or what God defines as a marriage that he would bless. And so that was important for me to show. Guys are now learning how to go beyond what she looks like and looking at the heart. Women used to be experts at it. And then we slowly moved away from what we knew and started doing the same thing that men did, looking on what was on the outside. And women need to go right back to where we were We were good at judging the heart and making sure that the characteristics were there, the quality characteristics about this guy. We used to be good at that, and we have to go back, because now that's why we're having so many bad problems.
I don't know about y'all, but this is some deep stuff right now. This seems like a perfect time for us to do what I call, when we talk about what's in your cup. Ladies and men, I hope everybody got their lives together, because Dr. V has gotten us all together on both sides of the aisle. We're going to go ahead and take a pause and take a sip from our cups and talk a little bit about what's in our cup. Okay, Dr. V. When I tell you, Dr. V, I can resonate with that so well. I mean, it's true, because I know a lot of narcissistic women too, on both sides of the spectrum.
Yep.
And no matter which way direction it's coming from,
Right.
The spirit is not of God. You know what I mean? And
Yeah.
it's very difficult to grow anything that's going to have any type of substance, or that's going to be able to have any type of longevity, when it's built under these types of constraints.
Right.
So I just appreciate the fact that you're willing to have those difficult moments and conversations with us, so that we can have those things with ourselves. And sometimes to recognize, first of all, you got to check yourself.
Right.
And take that mirror to yourself and ask
Hello.
yourself,
Yes.
What part don't I make, in this whole scenario, before we even begin to talk about building something with someone else. Because so many times I think that that's where the microscope, it comes on someone else. Do they have this? Do they? But we don't take that time to have that internal check to see where we may fall off, and where we can use some constructive criticism to be able to go to that next level in life.
Right.
Dr. V, you're doing so many amazing things. Media personality. I have to touch on this. First of all, you are a co-host with Cyrus Webb.
Yeah.
Let's talk about what this experience is like for you. Your own show with Dr. Velma Speaks, but the new show that you're going to have with Finding Your Voice. Tell us a little bit about that, and what was the inspiration behind it?
It came from the place that I started when I began discovering my own voice after leaving the world of corporate. I wrote for corporate. I knew their language. I knew how to fashion their sentences. I knew how to respond. But when I left that and had the conversations with my daughters, and where they encouraged me to write that first book, I had to discover, okay, well, what do I say and how do I want to say it? What is it? How do I apply my voice now? So I had to really discover that myself. Not only did I have to learn the literary world, because it was different for me. There's different rules for nonfiction versus fiction. I had to learn that. So I spent some time just in self-help books, really trying to discover what I needed to say and how I needed to say it. And then they had to agree with me if I put it in the book, we had to be transparent and honest with what we talked about. And that's what we all agreed. And so that became, and then I did not know how to publish a book myself at the time. So I decided to get one of those boutique publishers, I guess is what you call it. And I didn't mind paying for it, because it took me about a year to finish the final draft. So I made payments and got it done. I didn't want to do anything. I wanted them to do it all so I can learn what the steps were. And that's what I did at the time. I wouldn't recommend it to anybody if that's not what they want to do. But I had to learn and discover what I needed to know. And I had no idea that there would be other books following this, but there were.
First of all, Dr. V, I want you to tell people the age that you were when you first released your first book. Because I think so many times we give ourselves excuses and say, no, I can't do it. I should have did it back then. Or, it's too late to do it. As an inspiration, as an encouragement for people to understand that while you have breath, you still have the ability to be able to do whatever it is that you set your mind to. Dr. V, tell us your age when you published your first book.
First of all, let me just say that if you're in your 20s and you've only been married for 2 seconds, you can't tell me anything about coaching my marriage. I've been here long enough.
Right.
Sorry, I appreciate what you're trying to tell everybody, but you can't coach me.
I hear you.
So I'll take a Titus 2 woman anytime. Somebody who's been there, done that, know that, experienced that, and can tell you how to get out of that.
Yes. I need somebody to let me know how to reverse, double park if something is going on in my lane. I need all of that. I need to know
So
you've been
yes,
here for a minute. You've been through a couple of seasons.
I wondered that in the beginning too, but one of the scriptures in that fool's book is a fool rejects wisdom.
Yes.
Wisdom comes from experience. Wisdom comes from what you already know that you don't know. I used to hang around with the older people for that reason. I didn't want to hang around with people my age. They couldn't tell me anything. I needed to learn from the people that I can learn from. And let me tell you, I was 65 years old when I started my first book, 6 years
First of all,
ago.
isn't she amazing? First of all, Dr. V, let me just say it right now. Shameless plug, black don't crack. I'm gonna just tell you in case y'all don't know. Dr. V is
Oh my
beautiful
gosh.
inside and out, and you just look gorgeous. Let me just first of
Ah,
all say that. But it
thank
just
you, sis. I
shows you.
appreciate it.
No, it's all true. But it shows you that, the only thing that's stopping you is you. If you're saying, I
Yep,
don't have enough
that's right.
money, or I don't have enough time, or I don't have enough resources, those are all excuses.
It's all in there.
And you have to get rid of them. And Dr. V did this, and not only is she just being an author, she is killing it. How many books do you have today, Dr. V?
It's over 17. I have to go back and count, but yeah, over
I
17.
was trying to look at all. I'm like, not only does she have the Catch series, but including with that, she also has, the homework basket, which is it's not fiction. It's the actual true story books that you can kind of unpack some of those lessons that she's teaching you with throughout the series. But, so many things that she's written her on her own, and also been a contributing author for. So I just want to say we are just so thankful that you said yes and just went ahead and did it and released the book and just kept going and kept going. So you just show us what tenacity and what resilience looks like,
Yes.
and determination. And you show people what a yes can look like.
Mm-hmm.
So you got to tell yourself yes. Another thing I wanted to mention too is, some people might not know this, but the reason how I met Dr. V was through a little thing called She Said Yes to Herself Summit. Laquita Parks, who was an amazing friend of both of us and a publisher, for Pay Pro V Publishing, in case you guys are looking for a publisher. When we're talking about the summit, she was like, I know the perfect person to be the MC. I'm like, really? Okay, well, whoever you think, I'm 100% with it. She's like, Dr. Vilma Bagby. This is who we need. This is who we need. And when I first had the opportunity to meet you, it didn't disappoint. I knew Laquita, and we've had enough, interactions for me to be able to trust Laquita. But when I say that there were no words that were wasted, everything that she said about you was spot on.
Wow.
I can't say enough good things about Dr. Vilma Bagby. She's not only an amazing woman, an amazing professional, she's just an amazing being. And I want to say to you publicly, Dr. V, I want to thank you for the times that we've shared, everything that you have gifted to me, and everything that you said. It's impacted me in such a very real way. And I love you so very much. I just want you to know that I think the world of you, absolutely. I'm not going to get teary today.
No, Chanelle, please don't make my eyes water. Back at you, because when I thought about you accepting me in that moment to MC something that was very personal to you, to really launch that conference, I felt fortunate at that time. You didn't have to do that because you really didn't know me. So I have always appreciated you extending that opportunity to me. So all the love is back at you, because
it was well. I'm telling you, not one word was wasted. Everything, you were that and more. So
it was a great conference. It really was.
And so if you guys are looking for an MC, and not only does she do MCing, but she also does live events. Again, I kind of referenced about the Christian Book Lovers Retreat. If you guys didn't catch her there live, she has some things in the works for 2025. She may tell us a little bit about that. I don't know. We'll see.
Yeah, I will.
Okay.
You want me to tell you now?
Yes, we got a little time, so yes.
Well, one of the things I did in my Facebook group, I have a Facebook group for authors, marketers, graphic designers. I try to pull as many as I can together so that they could take advantage of each other's products and things of that nature. Try to inspire as well. And I remember posting right after the hurricane look, if there are members in this group who are in those hurricane affected areas, please post your business here. And I encourage the group to take advantage of their businesses to keep them afloat during this time. And who post but Pay Pro V? I said, okay. I'm going to take on, I'm going to be the first to commit to this. I'll have you publish one of my books. So she is publishing for me.
Congratulations.
My WOW journal is coming out next month. So we have the WOW t-shirt, of course, that comes from the book, the Catch series, A Woman of Worth, going back and talking about the importance of a woman embracing who God says that she is. And God has placed such worth on a woman. It's so important for her to embrace that. And I've met so many women who just don't know. And so saying yes is so key to your message as well. So I have the WOW cup already and the WOW t-shirt, but I decided to create the journal as well. And you're a part of it. I asked 30 women to give me their favorite scripture and then to tell why that scripture speaks to them. And then they had to create their own affirmation. So each one has an affirmation, a scripture, and then the person tells you why that scripture was important to them. And then I added to all of them a personal reflection with either a question or some challenges you needed to make sure you affirmed what was being said and that you embraced it and believed it. So that 30-day WOW journal, Women of Worth, will be coming out next month and being published by Pay Pro V Publishing.
I love it. So is there pre-orders for people that we can do?
There will be, but as soon as my publisher gives me the go ahead, we'll get it loaded up and I'll be advertising and promoting the fact that it's now on pre-order.
I love it. Dr. V, you're doing so many amazing things, from not just being an author, being a media personality, being a Christian speaker, also being a minister, so many different gamuts you're touching and impacting lives. I want to say thank you for just continuing to be resilient and continuing to just showcase what God has given to you and being faithful in giving it to us, because you could have kept all this knowledge and wisdom to yourself and hoarded it, but you've been giving it away. So
I was going to. God said, why do you think I gave it to you? Tell somebody else.
And we appreciate the fact that you've done it. Ladies and gentlemen, make sure that you guys stay connected with Dr. T.R.I.V.I.A Bagby. If you guys have not picked up the Catch series, then what are you guys waiting for? Go stop what you're doing. It's available on Amazon and on her website. I'm going to allow her to tell you that too. Make sure that you guys follow her if you're looking for a conference. Maybe you're a women's ministry leader at your church and you're thinking, okay, I want to do something impactful for the women in my church in 2025. And you're thinking, who can facilitate a dating and relationship seminar for the women at my church and invite some visitors out? This lady right here, Dr. T.R.I.V.I.A Bagby. If you have a men's group and you're saying, hey, we really want to get in on that too, because we want our men to be knowledgeable to know what type of women we should be looking for. This woman right there, Dr. T.R.I.V.I.A Bagby, you guys need to connect with her. Dr. T.R.I.V.I.A, please tell everybody how they can stay in contact with you or to book you or to connect with you to be able to work with you personally.
Sure. Just go to my website, drvelmabagby.com. And you can always connect with me on all the social media platforms as Dr. T.R.I.V.I.A Bagby. But the best place to go to connect with me is drvelmabagby.com.
You heard it here first, guys. Go to drvelmabagby.com so you guys can get your books there. You can set up something so that you can book her for events. Make sure you guys stay connected. And don't forget to get that WOW journal and that WOW swag. I definitely have to make sure I get mine. Dr. T.R.I.V.I.A Bagby, it is a pleasure as always. Thank you so much for saying yes. I absolutely adore you. And I'm going to leave the last word with you.
Well, I just want to say I had a wonderful time with you, Chanelle, and I appreciate the beautiful and powerful words you spoke over my life. I speak them back over your life and ask God to continue to cover and bless, including the woman that's working behind the scenes, that He'll begin to continue to open doors more than you would even expect. I thank God for all of you, and I appreciate you having me today.
My pleasure. With that one, trivia, we're out of here. Till next time. All right. Trivia.
Do you love waking up early in the morning, struggling to figure out what to do with your hair? We've all had our share of bad hair days. Are you ready for a change? Lock it and love it with Lock and Love Salon, conveniently located at 8117